Hello, and welcome. I want you to think about the last question you asked in AI. Maybe you asked it to write an email, generate an image of a cat in a spaceship, or explain a complex scientific theory. It felt effortless, right? Instantaneous. A little bit of magic in your pocket. But what if I told you that the digital magic we take for granted is pushing our world toward a hidden crisis? That every one of those effortless calculations contributes to an energy consumption so vast, so staggering, that the data centers powering our AI revolution are now burning through electricity on the scale of entire nations. We are asking for infinite intelligence from a finite system, and that system is screaming for a change. Today, we're not just going to talk about a new kind of computer chip. We're going to talk about the end of an era, the Silicon Age, and the quiet, shimmering dawn of its successor. This is the story of a fundamental barrier, a seemingly perfect solution with a fatal flaw and a single, brilliant breakthrough that could redefine not just our technology, but the very nature of thought itself. So, get comfortable, because we're about to journey to the edge of physics, to a place where computation is no longer etched in stone, but woven from light. For over half a century, we lived in a golden age of digital prophecy. A man named Gordon Moore, a co-founder of Intel, made an observation in 1965 that became the foundational law of our modern world. It's famously known as Moore's Law, and it was less a law of physics and more of an uncannily accurate prediction that the number of transistors we could fit on a silicon chip would double roughly every 2 years. This wasn't just a technical footnote for engineers. It was the engine of human progress. Every 2 years, our phones got smarter, our computers got faster, our medical equipment became more precise, and our video games became more realistic. It was a relentless, predictable, and exponential march forward. We were building our digital civilization on a staircase to the heavens, with each step twice as high as the last. We took it for granted. We expected our technology to become godlike, and for a long time, it obliged. But every staircase has a final step. And for the last decade, we've been standing on it, looking up at a wall. That wall is built by the fundamental laws of physics. To make transistors more powerful, we had to make them smaller. And we did. We shrank them from the size of a thumbnail to microscopic specks, and then smaller still, until today. The most advanced transistors are measured in single-digit nanometers. To put that in perspective, a single human hair is about 80,000 nanometers wide. The gates on these transistors, the tiny switches that control the flow of electrons, are now only a few atoms across. At this surreal, quantum scale, the orderly world of classical physics breaks down. The neat little fences we build to contain electrons no longer work. Electrons, the workhorses of our digital age, start to misbehave. They engage in a spooky phenomenon called quantum tunneling. They literally leak through solid barriers, like ghosts passing through walls. A switch that's supposed to be off suddenly isn't, causing errors and chaos within the chip's logic. And then there's the heat. Imagine a city the size of Manhattan being compressed into a space the size of your fingernail, with all its power lines, traffic, and energy still blazing. That's what's happening inside a modern CPU. Billions of transistors, flipping on and off billions of times per second, generate an immense amount of heat in a microscopic space. We've reached a point of thermal suffocation. The chips can't run any faster without melting themselves into slag. Have you ever felt your laptop or phone get uncomfortably hot when you're pushing it hard? That isn't a bug. It's a symptom of a civilization hitting a physical limit. You are feeling the end of Moore's Law right in the palm of your hand. Just as we reached this impasse, this great stagnation of silicon, a new demand emerged, demand more voracious and power-hungry than anything that came before it. Artificial intelligence. AI isn't just another app. It's a computational beast that feeds on data and processing power. Training a large AI model, like the ones that power ChatGPT or Midjourney, requires sifting through nearly the entire internet's worth of information. The energy required for a single training run can be equivalent to the annual carbon footprint of hundreds of households. So, here we are, at a crossroads. The engine of progress for the last 50 years has sputtered and stalled, precisely at the moment when our greatest ambitions demand that we floor the accelerator. We need a new engine, a new path. And to find it, we had to look away from the clumsy, crowded world of electrons and towards something far more elegant, ancient, and pure: light itself. If electrons are the foundation of our current technological world, think of them as tiny, grumpy commuters. They are particles with mass and charge. To get them to do anything, we have to push them through traffic-choked copper wires. They bump into each other, they jostle for space, and in doing so, they create friction. That friction generates heat, the very heat that's killing our silicon chips. It's an inherently inefficient, brute force way of moving information. It works, but it's messy. Now, consider light. Photons, the fundamental particles of light, are a completely different kind of creature. They have no mass and no charge. They don't crawl. They fly at the universe's ultimate speed limit. They don't need a physical wire to be pushed through. They travel effortlessly through glass fibers or even empty space. And here is the most magical property of all. They do not interact with each other. Imagine you take two powerful flashlights and you cross their beams in a dark room. Do the beams collide and scatter like tiny billiard balls? No. They pass right through one another as if the other wasn't even there. This single property is a revelation for computing. In an electronic chip, wires must be carefully insulated and routed to prevent interference. Electrons are solitary travelers that need their own lane. But with light, you can have a trillion different streams of information. A trillion different conversations, all occupying the same physical space at the same time without any crosstalk. It's the difference between a city with a million tiny one-way streets and a single, infinite-lane superhighway where every vehicle is a ghost that can pass through any other. This promise, the promise of photonics, has captivated scientists for decades. It offers a vision of computation free from the tyranny of heat and resistance. A world where data moves at the speed of light. Not because it's a catchy marketing phrase, but because it is literally made of light. The potential for speed and efficiency is staggering, promising performance thousands, if not millions, of times greater than what electronics can offer. It seemed like the perfect, elegant solution to the wall that silicon had run into. But for all its grace and speed, light carried a deep, seemingly fatal flaw. A kind of Achilles heel that kept this dream tantalizingly out of reach. For all its ability to move, light had no natural ability to stay. It was a perfect messenger, but a terrible keeper of secrets. Let's perform a thought experiment. I want you to try to write a novel, but with a special kind of pen. This pen can form the most beautiful, eloquent sentences in your mind, but it has no ink. The moment you finish one thought and move to the next, the previous one vanishes into thin air. You can think, but you cannot remember. How much of a novel could you write? None. You'd be trapped in an eternal, fleeting present. This is the fundamental dilemma of a computer. A computer has two core functions: processing, the thinking, and memory, the remembering. The processor, or the CPU, is the brilliant mind that performs calculations. But without memory, without a place to store the instructions, the data it's working on, and the results of its work, its calculations, are meaningless. They are just ephemeral flashes of logic that disappear instantly. Computation without memory is like a thought without a mind to hold it. This is the very problem that plagued photonic computing for decades. Light is a master of processing and transmission. We could use it to perform calculations at incredible speeds. We could use it to send data across the globe through fiber optic cables. But the moment the calculation was done, the light was gone. The answer vanished. To solve this, engineers had to create a clumsy, hybrid system. A photonic chip would perform a calculation at the speed of light, but then, to save the result, it had to stop. Translate that pulse of light back into a slow, clumsy electrical signal, and store it in a traditional electronic memory chip, like RAM. Then, for the next step of the calculation, it had to retrieve that electrical data, translate it back into light, and send it on its way. This constant back-and-forth conversion was the great betrayal of photonics. It was like owning a fleet of supersonic jets, but being forced to land and transfer all your passengers to horse-drawn carriages every few miles. The process was slow, inefficient, and burned a tremendous amount of energy. All the breathtaking advantages of speed and efficiency that light offered were completely erased by this constant, forced conversation with the old, slow world of electronics. The dream of a pure, all-photonic computer remained just that, a dream. It seemed that light was destined to be a carrier of information, but never its home. To unlock the future, someone, somewhere, had to solve an almost paradoxical riddle. They had to find a way to stop light in its tracks. They had to teach light how to remember. For years, the memory problem seemed like a fundamental law of nature. How can you store something that, by its very definition, is always moving at 186,000 miles per second? You can't put a photon in a box. It will either be absorbed or pass right through. It was a puzzle that stumped some of the best minds on the planet. The solution, when it finally arrived, wasn't a single, earth-shattering discovery, but the clever combination of two existing, fascinating pieces of technology. It was an act of profound scientific creativity. The breakthrough came from scientists who realized that if you can't put light in a box, maybe you can convince it to stay by building it the perfect prison it would enter willingly. The first piece of the puzzle is a device called a micro-ring resonator. Imagine a microscopic racetrack for light, smaller than the width of a human hair, etched onto a chip. It's essentially a tiny loop of a special material. When a beam of light traveling along a waveguide passes by this ring, if the light is of a very specific color or wavelength, it will peel off the main path and begin to circle endlessly inside the ring, resonating. It's like hitting a wine glass with the perfect frequency and hearing it sing. The light is now temporarily trapped, racing around this tiny circle millions of times. But it's still not a memory. If you turn off the source, the light in the ring vanishes. It's a holding pattern, not a storage unit. The second piece of the puzzle is where the true magic happens. It's a class of materials known as phase change materials, PCM. This might sound exotic, but you've probably used them without even knowing it. They are the heart of rewritable CDs and DVDs. These materials have a remarkable property. They can exist in two different states. In one state, their atoms are arranged in a messy, disordered wave. This is called the amorphous state. In this state, the material is opaque. In the other state, the atoms are in a neat, orderly, crystalline lattice. In this state, the material is transparent. The genius of the breakthrough was to pair these two ideas together. The scientists built a micro-ring resonator and placed a tiny speck of this phase change material on top of it. Here's how it works. You send a pulse of light representing a 1 in binary code into the system. The light enters the ring and begins to circle. Now, you fire a short, powerful laser pulse at the phase change material. This pulse heats it up and cools it down so quickly that the atoms are frozen in the messy, amorphous state. The material becomes opaque. Suddenly, the racetrack has a wall. The light that was circling inside the ring is now trapped. It can't get out. Even if you turn off the original light source, the light inside the ring remains. Bouncing around, held captive by the opaque PC. For the first time in history, light has been stored. It is holding a memory. We have written a 1. To read the data, you can check if there's light still resonating in the ring. And to erase it, you hit the PCM with a different, slightly longer and less intense laser pulse. This allows the atoms to gently rearrange themselves back into their preferred, orderly, crystalline state. The material becomes transparent again. The wall disappears, and the trapped light instantly escapes. The memory is now empty. We have written a 0. This wasn't just a clever trick. It was a paradigm shift. This innovation meant that for the first time, a single device, on a single chip, could use light to compute, to transmit, and to remember. The clumsy translation back and forth to electronics was no longer necessary. The horse-drawn carriage could finally be unhitched from the supersonic jet. Photonic chips had gained a true, non-volatile memory, unlocking their potential to become complete, self-sufficient computing engines. Light had been taught to think, and now it had been taught to hold its thought. So, we've solved the memory problem. But to truly grasp why this is so revolutionary, we need to understand a dirty little secret about the computers we use every single day. There's a fundamental design flaw that has been baked into almost every computer since the 1940s, and it's called the von Neumann bottleneck. The concept was developed by the brilliant mathematician John von Neumann. His architecture splits a computer into 2 main parts: the central processing unit, CPU, which is the brain, and the memory RAM, which is the library of information. The brain is incredibly fast, but the library is located in a different part of the building. To perform any task, the CPU has to send a request down a relatively narrow hallway called a bust to the memory. Wait for the memory to find the right piece of data, send it back down the same hallway, and only then can the CPU perform its calculation. Imagine a world-class chef who can chop vegetables at superhuman speed, but their pantry, with all the ingredients, is on the other side of a massive, crowded stadium. For every single carrot, every pinch of salt, they have to stop what they're doing. Run across the stadium, grab the ingredient, run all the way back, and only then can they make a single chop. How much of the chef's time is actually spent cooking? Almost none. Most of it is wasted in transit. This is the absurd reality inside your computer. It's estimated that modern chips waste up to 90% of their energy and time not on actual computation, but on this endless, inefficient shuttling of data back and forth between the processor and memory. This is the von Neumann bottleneck, and it is the single biggest source of inefficiency and heat generation in modern electronics. The photonic memory breakthrough doesn't just fix a problem for light-based computers. It obliterates this decades-old bottleneck. With the ability to store light in the same place where it's being processed, the chef is no longer on the other side of a stadium from the pantry. The chef is standing inside the pantry. The ingredients, the date are right there, within arm's reach. This concept is called in-memory computing. Calculations can happen at the very point where the data is being held. There is no data commute. There is no wasted energy. The divide between processor and memory collapses. Operations happen instantaneously, at light speed, with an elegance and efficiency that silicon can only dream of. By solving its own memory problem, photonics didn't just catch up to electronics. It leapfrogged it, offering a solution to a problem that has plagued computer architects for nearly a century. It's a fundamental rethinking of how a computer should work, moving from a system of separated, specialized components to a holistic, integrated one, where data and logic live together in a dance of light. As if this breakthrough weren't enough, light had another spectacular gift to offer. A gift rooted in something we've all seen and admired since we were children: the rainbow. When you see white light pass through a prism, it splits into its constituent colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. This beautiful display isn't just a trick of optics, it's a visual representation of a profound physical truth. White light is not a single entity. It is a chorus of countless different frequencies, or wavelengths, all traveling together. Each color is its own unique stream of information. In the world of fiber optics, this principle is already used in a technique called wavelength division, multiplexing, It's how we send massive amounts of internet data across oceans. Instead of sending one data stream through a glass fiber, companies send dozens of different streams simultaneously, each encoded in a slightly different color of light. They all travel through the same single fiber, passing through each other without interference, and are separated again at the other end. Now, imagine applying this principle not to a cable stretching across the Atlantic, but to a single computational unit on a chip the size of a fingernail. In an electronic computer, if you want to perform more tasks at the same time, what we call parallelism, you have to physically build more processing cores. You add more transistors, more wires, making the chip bigger, more complex, and hotter. It's a brute force approach of building more and more separate lanes on your digital highway. Photonics offers a path of breathtaking elegance. With a photonic chip, you don't need to build more structures to get more parallelism. You simply use more colors. You can have a red beam of light performing one calculation, a green beam performing a completely different one, and a blue beam doing a third, all happening at the same time in the same micro-ring resonator. Researchers have already demonstrated systems that can use dozens of different colors simultaneously within a single device. This is like having a single-lane road that can instantly transform into a 100-lane superhighway without any new construction. Unlike crowded electronic transistors, which are constantly fighting for space and resources, photonics achieves massive parallelism inside one elegant, unified structure. It's a form of hyper-efficiency that scales not by adding more bulk, but by adding more richness and complexity to the light itself. This parallelism is a perfect match for the demands of modern computing, especially AI, where the tasks involve performing millions of similar, simple calculations all at once. The ability to process an entire spectrum of data simultaneously gives photonic chips an almost unfair advantage, promising a future where a single cool-running chip can have the parallel processing power of a massive supercomputer today. Let's return to the problem we started with: the insatiable energy hunger of artificial intelligence. AI is not like traditional software. It learns by finding patterns in colossal amounts of data. This process, especially for tasks involving matrix multiplications, the mathematical foundation of neural networks, is what we call embarrassingly parallel. It's a huge number of repetitive calculations that can all be done at the same time. For a silicon-based GPU, this means firing up thousands of cores, shuttling mountains of data back and forth from memory, and generating enough heat to warm a small house. The entire architecture is straining at the seams, fighting the von Neumann bottleneck and thermal limits with every calculation. It's powerful, but it's a brute force assault. Now, consider how a photonic chip approaches the same problem. It can perform these massive matrix multiplications in a fundamentally different way. The data can be encoded into the intensity of dozens of different colors of light. These beams are combined and passed through the photonic processor, and the calculation happens almost instantaneously as the light waves interfere with each other. The result is read out on the other side. It's an analog computation happening at the speed of light, with near-zero energy cost for the computation itself. The in-memory design means the data doesn't have to travel. And the parallelism of colors means thousands of calculations happen at once in the same space. The difference is profound. It's the difference between a million people shouting one word at a time versus a perfectly harmonized choir singing a complex symphony. This could transform AI from a costly, unsustainable burden into something clean, efficient, and widely accessible. Imagine AI models training not in months, at the cost of millions of dollars in electricity, but in days or even hours, on a single rack of photonic servers. Imagine your smartphone having an AI coprocessor so powerful it could perform real-time language, translation, and complex image recognition without draining your battery in 10 minutes. Imagine self-driving cars with onboard computers that can process the torrent of sensory data from their environment instantly, with a fraction of the power they need today. Photonic computing could democratize AI, taking it from the exclusive domain of tech giants with massive data centers and putting it into the hands of researchers, startups, and even individuals. It promises to make AI not just more powerful, but also more sustainable, a tool that works in harmony with our planet's energy resources, not against them. It's the key to unlocking the next stage of the AI revolution, a stage where intelligence is not measured by the power it consumes, but by the efficiency with which it thinks. While AI may be the most immediate and headline-grabbing application, the promise of photonic computing stretches far, far beyond it. What we are talking about is a foundational shift in our ability to process information, and that will touch every field of human endeavor. Think about the grand challenges facing humanity, the problems so complex that even our mightiest supercomputers struggle with them. Consider climate modeling. Simulating the Earth's climate is a task of almost unimaginable complexity, involving the chaotic interactions of oceans, atmosphere, ice caps, and human activity. Our current models are incredible achievements, but they are forced to make approximations. A photonic supercomputer, with its massive parallelism and speed, could run simulations with a resolution and fidelity we can only dream of today. We could model the impact of a policy decision not over a continent, but over a specific city in real time. It could give us the foresight to navigate the climate crisis, turning guesswork into clear-eyed strategy. Look at drug discovery and medicine. Developing a new drug is a decade-long, billion-dollar process of painstaking trial and error. A huge part of that is simulating how potential drug molecules will interact with the proteins of a virus or a cancer cell. A photonic computer could simulate millions of these interactions in a matter of hours, drastically accelerating the search for new cures. During the next pandemic, instead of a year-long race for a vaccine, we might be able to design one in a week. Think about space exploration. We are gathering data from the universe at an ever-increasing rate, with telescopes like the James Webb Space Telescope sending back torrents of information. Photonic processors could analyze this data in real time, searching for the faint chemical signatures of life in the atmospheres of distant exoplanets, or modeling the formation of galaxies with unprecedented accuracy. Or consider global finance, where algorithms need to model incredibly complex, interconnected markets in fractions of a second. Photonic systems could provide a leap in processing power that makes our financial systems more stable and predictive. The common thread here is the compression of time. The promise of photonic computing is to take the problems that currently take years and solve them in days. It's about turning waiting into discovery. It's about giving our most brilliant scientists, doctors, and engineers a tool that can keep up with the speed of their own thoughts. allowing them to ask bigger questions and find answers within their own lifetimes, not the lifetimes of their grandchildren. This isn't just an upgrade. It's a catalyst for a new renaissance of discovery. Now, after painting this incredible picture of the future, it's important to take a breath and be realistic. This new era of light-based computing is not going to arrive overnight. The journey from a breakthrough in a university lab to a photonic chip in your phone is a long and arduous one, fraught with significant challenges. First, there's the issue of size. As miraculous as photons are, they are also constrained by their wavelength. The wavelength of the light used in these systems is much larger than the scale at which we can build electronic transistors. This means that, for now, photonic components are physically bulkier than their silicon counterparts. While an M1 chip from Apple has billions of transistors, a current photonic chip might have thousands of components. The race is on to shrink these light-based circuits, to find new materials and designs that can manipulate light on a much smaller scale. Second is the problem of durability and manufacturing. Those magical phase change materials are fantastic, but they have a limited lifespan. They can only be switched back and forth between their crystalline and amorphous states a certain number of times before they begin to degrade. For a memory chip that needs to perform trillions of operations, this is a critical hurdle. Furthermore, manufacturing these hybrid chips, which combine exotic photonic materials with traditional silicon fabrication techniques, is incredibly complex and expensive. We need to invent a whole new industrial ecosystem to build these devices at scale. But perhaps the biggest obstacle of all is inertia. Our entire digital world, every piece of software, every programming language, every network protocols built on a foundation of electronics. It is designed to think in the binary language of electrons. We can't just unplug the old world and plug in the new one. The transition will be slow and gradual. The first applications will likely be in specialized accelerators within data centers, with photonic chips working alongside traditional CPUs and GPUs. It will be a hybrid era for a long time. These are not trivial problems. Startups, university labs, and major tech companies are in a fierce race to solve them. They are challenges of material science, of engineering, of software design, and of economics. But it's important to see these obstacles not as signs of failure, but as the necessary growing pains of any true revolution. Every great technological shift, from the steam engine to the internet, faced similar skepticism and similar monumental hurdles. The prize for overcoming them this time is nothing less than the future of intelligence itself. I want you to hold out your hand and look at your fingertip. Imagine resting there, a small, shimmering sliver of glass and silicon. It doesn't get hot to the touch. Instead, it emits a faint, almost imperceptible glow. And inside that chip, thoughts are not crawling through copper wires. They are flowing, interfering, and resonating as waves of pure light. This is not science fiction. This is the promise that is quietly being born in laboratories around the world. The journey to this point, from the hard wall of silicon scaling to the first spark of photonic memory, holds a few powerful lessons that I think we can all apply to our own lives, far away from the world of nanotechnology. First, hitting a wall is often the greatest catalyst for creativity. For decades, the path forward was clear. Just make things smaller. It was comfortable and predictable. It was only when that path became a dead end that the truly radical, creative thinking began. In our own lives, when we face a dead end in a career, a project, or a relationship, it feels like a failure. But maybe it's an invitation. An invitation to stop trying to climb the same wall and instead look for a completely different path, a path we never would have considered otherwise. Second, our greatest weaknesses can hide the key to our greatest strengths. Light's inability to hold memory was its fatal flaw. It was the one reason this beautiful technology was considered impractical. But the scientists who solved this didn't give up on light. They obsessed over that one flaw. They focused all their ingenuity on it, and in solving it, they didn't just make photonics viable. They created a system that also solved the von Neumann bottleneck, a problem that had plagued the old technology for a century. So, what if we applied that to ourselves? Instead of ignoring or hiding our perceived weaknesses, what if we confronted them, studied them, and understood them? We might find that in solving for our own flaw, we unlock a unique strength that nobody else has. Finally, the most elegant solutions are often found by listening to nature. The power of photonics comes from embracing the fundamental properties of light: its speed, its lack of interaction, its spectrum of colors. The answer wasn't to force light to behave like an electron. It was to build a new kind of computer that thinks like light. In our complex world, we often try to solve problems with more complexity. But sometimes, the most profound breakthroughs come from stepping back and observing the simple, elegant principles of the natural world and asking how we can work with them, not against them. The road ahead for photonic computing is still long, and there is much uncertainty. But the shift feels inevitable, driven by the fundamental limits of our old way of thinking and the boundless potential of the new. One day, our machines may not just run on light, but truly think with it. And history will look back at this moment, at these quiet breakthroughs, as the first, gentle spark of a new technological dawn. And that brings me to a question for you. If you were given a computer that could solve a problem in a day that now takes a decade, what grand challenge would you want it to tackle first? Climate change, disease, the mysteries of the universe. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to see what you all would prioritize. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. I wish you all the very best of health, happiness, and clarity of thought. If this story sparked your curiosity and made you look at the world a little differently, please consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. It's a small click for you, but it truly helps us continue to explore these big ideas together.